They're flushing the toilets now.
Yep.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of This Is My Bourbon Podcast. I'm your host, Perry, and I got Curtis and Swan with me this week. Guys, hello.
Hello.
What's up? Hey. Hi. How you guys been?
So good.
So good.
I've been.
You are so convincing.
I've
Swan.
been the best I've ever been.
You're both horrible, horrible liars.
I've actually been okay. I'm not lying when I say that. I mean, it's like I've actually had more bourbon recently than in past episodes where it's like, what have you had since last time? Nothing.
Not
like,
a daggum thing.
Been trying a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, see, I haven't gotten on that yet, but I mean, I'm doing all right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just tired a little bit, but
I get
feeling
that.
good.
I get that too. I'm tired as well. But thank you all so much for tuning in for another week. We appreciate you all being here. We're going to have a really fun little conversation on Heaven Hill and the brand and all their products. And yeah, I'm excited about it. You guys know how big fans of Heaven Hill we are. And I figured why not take the time to just look through their catalog and enjoy some of their many offerings. Because, yeah, they do dominate about half the liquor store, even if you don't realize it. And I think that we've got a good representation of what they bring to the table here actually on the table. So, yeah, but before we get too far into it, our first pour, which is not really flying blind this week, but our first pour is Evan Williams 1783. And I figured it'd be a good way for us to acclimate our palate towards the Heaven Hill profile. How do you guys like this?
It is easily one of my favorite below 90 bourbons, which is a category.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I don't dip into that category too much. I mean, it's between this and the single barrel they put out, Evan Williams.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't think I have another single barrel bourbon that I even look at that much about like, well, what's the year that it came out? Like, you know, people go nuts over when it was put in the barrel with those. As looking towards flavor profile, I don't know. It's just solid. You can't go wrong with it. You can pick it up and anyone can start with it.
Yeah. It's very approachable. It's really good. And you know, like we were saying, we don't really pick that below 90 proof a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely, if ever, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that I would pick up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a everyday sipper.
It's $18.
It's really good. Yeah, exactly.
It's so
Can't
hard
beat
to
that.
pass up one of these bottles for that price. And I don't think that it's not the most updated branding or anything. So there's kind of this inclination to maybe look over it a little bit when you're looking on the shelves. But yeah, it's good. The guys over at the podcast recently have maybe not totally rediscovered it, but they found that it's one of their new go-tos. And we're spreading the love about Evan Williams 1783. And of course, Sarah from It's Bourbon Night. She's been preaching the gospel about this for years
while.
now.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting like almost kind of barbecue note at the end of it. Like the very, very tail end of the finish. It's a smoky kind of mesquite barbecue flavor that is a really, for me, kind of a deep note that I wouldn't have expected with a bourbon that's this low of a proof.
Yeah, I usually just associate below 90 with watered down.
Yeah.
And this has got some richness to it that a lot of them don't. Like, I don't know if it's just the magic 86 number that a lot of them they gravitate towards. That maybe it's got a little bit more than just a regular 80 proofer, but I don't get any of this from H&H or the Four Roses Yellow Label.
No way.
I mean, this has got a lot more to it.
Yeah, I think that there's something kind of special about this bottle that maybe just kind of underrated. It might just be kind of untapped in the popular market. So go buy this bottle. It won't set you back much. What you guys been drinking recently? I'm curious.
I have been drinking my standard Henry McKenna 10-year. Literally had a glass last night and was like, still like it.
You and I kind of veered off the path of bourbon the other night at your Stock the Bar party.
We sure did, yes.
Yeah, we had margaritas.
Yes, margaritas. And that's kind of been what I've been drinking lately, is margaritas.
Tell them about this really cool machine that you guys have.
Yeah. So if we have a margarita machine, and the thing is awesome, and it's dangerous because you can make a pitcher of margaritas in about 30 seconds. That's not a joke.
Swan's eyes got real big.
Yeah. So it's really awesome. So if you ever need margaritas and you're just like in the mood for it, or if you're really into it, go buy that machine because they're really good.
And it's got it all labeled to where you know like what to put in, how much to put in, and everything.
They have like a no-brainer mixer is what it's called.
So awesome.
And
great.
You fill it up and it has little markings, and then you open it up, goes into the pitcher, you close it back up, start it up.
All right. Bourbon Ritas.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
Not next time. Sometime.
I really haven't even thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do like a summer special episode before summer is over and everything. And we'll do, Steven was asking about this a couple weeks ago too. Some summer bourbon cocktails. So
I don't need the kind of power that machine would give me.
Well, that's like the lower grade, the lower model too. They have one machine that has 3 pitchers that you can make at the same time, and so if you want margaritas, daiquiris, and like pina coladas, you can have all 3 at the same time.
It sounds like you could just take over the world at that point. Like, I mean,
yeah.
What is that machine?
Why do you need all that?
Who looks at that and thinks, yes, this is what I need?
I don't know.
it conquers the 3 major superpowers in the world of government.
Yeah.
You could take over Lexington with that thing.
Yeah.
And then it assembles into Voltron at some point.
The Bourbon Rita thing's cool, though. We should try that.
Yeah, I think that'd be something interesting, a little interesting experiment for us to do. Swan, what about you?
I've been drinking the same thing, but a lot of it. David Nicholson Reserve.
Yeah, you talked about that recently with me too.
Yeah, that stuff is just so good, man. I think it's distilled and aged in Kentucky, but it's bottled out of St. Louis. It's the one with the black label. The 1843 that they offer, I believe, is wheated, but the black label is pretty good. If you like turkey, it's got a lot of turkey notes to it.
Yeah, it does.
So it's not necessarily a cheap alternative to turkey because I think it's more, and it's really around that 100 proof range.
It's about $30, I think, 35, something like that.
But if you have gotten to the point where you're like, I've had everything from turkey, I'm wanting to move on to something, but I'm not really looking to get way out of my comfort zone, it's a good one to try.
As of the time of this episode actually releasing, we're now a week and a half removed from Lexington Burger Week, which I talked about on last week's episode with John Edwards from Dad's Drinking Bourbon, and all the burgers that I ate. I had 8 burgers.
Wow.
For Burger Week.
All right, Bob.
Yeah. And I don't want to bore everybody with the list again because I went over it last week with John. But one of the best places that I went to was OBC Kitchen, of course. They had a Gorgonzola truffle burger. That was unbelievable. It was Kobe beef. Absolutely perfect. Definitely my best burger of the week. But while I was there, I had their new riff pick, which was really good. And I remember having it when it first came out. And I was like, this is fine. I'd rather have an off-the-shelf one. And then there's something about, I think it's opened up quite a bit since they first got those bottles in.
How you know you have a problem? When at the bar you go to that you had their pick when they first opened it.
All right, here we go.
Came back. Oh, it opened up a lot then. Perry, it's been like 4 days. You've been here every day.
I plead the 5th. So that's what I've been drinking. I just poured for everybody. I passed it around. Old Fitzgerald Prime Bourbon. This is the 86 proof version.
Right.
It's now 80 proof. This is a wheated bourbon.
Okay.
Of course. This is in a little plastic 375, which can't really get too many of anymore.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick out notes from that 13er we had and see if there's any, reminiscent notes in it.
There's definitely some of those, I would say some of the darker notes that were present in the 13 year, but it's interesting. There's not a whole lot of lightness on the nose.
No, there's
for me
not.
with this one.
You know how we had that like fried plantains thing with it?
Yeah.
This is like just take the plantains out. This is just the fried
The fried sugar.
caramel sugar
Yep.
Yeah.
residue. I wish I could still get this.
It's significantly better than the 80 proof Old Fitz Prime that's out right now.
I'm also trying to compare it to this 1783 we just had because it's a wheater as opposed to one with rye in it. It's kind of strange because I always think that it's going to have less kick, but at 86 proof, I'm just getting more sweetness off the wheated one than I do with the rye.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was getting to. With that being said, I had some more of that spice, though. I'm trying to pick up what the spice is specifically.
It's ginger.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like a gingerbread cookie. It's definitely, yep, for sure. As I kind of go in for a sip on it, I pick up a little bit more on the nose as well. And I'm kind of finding some peanuts in there, but also a little bit of cigar tobacco that is not overly present, but it's definitely there, I would say.
Getting the cigar tobacco as much, but I'm getting the peanuts. And that could just be a product of I don't really smoke cigars, so I'm not really sure what I'm looking for.
Sure. That's fair.
It is good, though. I really wish this was a normal shelf offering. And going back to the old Fitz Bottled and Bond that they used to put out, it's great. It's very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
If you told me this was 86 proof, I'd be like, you're kidding.
Yeah, I would have thought it was definitely in the 90s.
Yeah.
Just got so much flavor to it for so little proof.
Yeah.
I would gladly sip on this all night and not get in trouble. That's the best part.
Or maybe you would. You might eventually.
Yeah,
You never know.
eventually. I'd have most of that pint before I was like struggling a little bit. That's okay.
That's the beautiful thing about pints. It's got like an end point to it where you're like, all right,
Yeah, it's a
can't
physical
do this
cutoff.
anymore.
Yeah.
The decision has been made for me. Anyway, let's talk about Heaven Hill. Not
It's
that we haven't
amazing.
been already. I love Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
Why do we love Heaven Hill?
I am such a sucker for the baked good notes, and they bring it better, in my opinion, than any other distillery.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's for me, Elijah Craig is like just, and I've heard Perry say this plenty of times. It's the staple for what I want in a bourbon.
Yep.
So if I
Absolutely.
can get notes of that and alterations of that and just more baked goods notes across their entire line, I'm perfectly fine with that. Not to mention my favorite expression, Bottled and Bond. They do it better than anyone else.
Yep.
It's hard to compare. I mean, you've got E.H. Taylor that puts out majority of their line Bottled and Bond. Great. Still not like Heaven Hill's doing. I mean, I'd say almost half their lineup is literally Bottled and Bond bourbons, and probably some that you're like, I've never heard of, or you overlook, because let's face it, out of most of the distilleries that I look at, Heaven Hill's branding's not fantastic, but it doesn't need to be. You know, it's very, very good product.
Heaven Hill's branding, I would say, is generally kind of all over the place.
There is no consistency.
No,
whatsoever.
there really isn't. And I mean, I understand because they're kind of an umbrella company in terms of the different brands that they own and the different brands that they represent. And I'm not saying that a bottle of JTS Brown has to look just like a bottle of Elijah Craig, it has to look just like a bottle of Old Fitz. You know, there should be some kind of variance because, yes, they do own those different brands within the umbrella of the Heaven Hill company. That being said, though, yeah, there isn't a whole lot of like high-end consistency with it. I mean, you look at the branding of Turkey, it's all the basically you can tell that it's the same product across the board.
It's all part of the same line.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that they have just different like such different brands. They have Elijah Craig, they have Evan Williams, they have, you know, all these different renditions and brands. They aren't different. Like, I think you want to have that difference in brand recognition because they all have that equity in it.
I agree, but I guess my inclination or my
You do kind of. Sorry,
That's okay.
You do kind of lose that. Like, oh, Heaven Hill makes that.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at. Is
Yes.
that I mean, how long was it before you realized that Elijah Craig was a Heaven Hill brand?
Oh,
A long time,
time,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it's like they even go so far as to separate, to a degree, the Evan Williams brand from Heaven Hill itself. I mean, there is the Evan Williams experience in Louisville, which is totally removed from the Heaven Hill
Hill.
distillery.
yeah.
And you look at the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, Heaven Hill and Evan Williams are two different stops. But they're owned by the same umbrella company that identifies with both parts of the brand. And it's just kind of like, it's a little weird. I get it.
Yeah.
I get the diversification of the portfolio. But, I think it's interesting that there's not really as much of a cohesiveness in terms of, knowing that each, unless you are a pretty knowledgeable bourbon drinker, there's not really a good indication as to whether or not, this all is part of one company.
Yeah. I think a lot of it probably goes back to like just financials and stuff like that.
Sure.
But on why they do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Like you said, Evan Williams has their whole experience. Well, that's just one brand of what Heaven Hill is. It's like Diageo with Bullet and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean that's not to say that, most of the major brands are owned by other companies.
Yeah.
Wild Turkey's owned by Campari. Jim Beam's owned by Beam Suntory, so is Maker's Mark. I mean, there are bigger companies, but I think that Heaven Hill, where they're family owned, have been since 1935.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game, and something that I think they would rather try to find a through line to associate themselves with their mini brands. Swan has been sitting on something that he wants to say though.
I mean, just like even on their, I'm looking at a bottle of Elijah Craig. It says distilled and bottled by the Elijah Craig Distillery Company, not Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
Now,
That is interesting.
Yeah, but to that point, you look at a bottle of Ancient Age, and it says bottled by the Ancient Age Distilling Company, which is Buffalo Trace now.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like kind of a, why wouldn't you want to boast that you're Heaven Hill? I mean, I would if I was Heaven Hill.
Even like just small on the, it's distilled in, it doesn't have to bring attention to it.
Right. And I mean, like, it's not to say that they don't, maybe in a more specific mode, associate these many brands with their main one. But yeah, I am curious as to why, and this is probably a question for, maybe not Bernie Lovers, but some of the other folks over at Heaven Hill as well. Why is there not this through line for their brands?
I guess maybe maybe they're all operated by like their own like set of management. I don't know.
I kind of see what you're saying, but I guess my immediate rebuttal to that is Connor O'Driscoll is still the master distiller at Heaven Hill, and he oversees all of the distilling at Heaven Hill. You know? So maybe he does kind of divvy up the work between people, but I would say that it would make more sense for them to have a core team, run by a couple of people, one person, whatever. I don't know.
I guess that's a lot of brands to go through.
It is a lot of brands.
One person.
Yeah.
Or like multiple people.
Of course it is.
So I wonder if that's how, like, Elijah Craig has an Elijah Craig team, like all that kind of stuff. Kind of like Brown Foreman with Woodford.
Yeah.
I do like they're really just laser focused on a lot of heritage stuff. Even some, like, going back to their branding, even some of their branding is a heritage thing. I mean, like the JTS Brown, the JW Dant, all of those have not changed in a long time. And the juices, they've tried to keep, as close to the original as they can. And they don't need all those brands separated. They could easily sell one bottled and bond bourbon if they want, but it's more of a heritage deal for them to keep them alive. That's just fascinating to me that they want to do all those different expressions.
Yeah. Speaking of different expressions, we may have already had an Evan Williams product, but this is a special Evan Williams product. This is pre-fire. This is 7-year-old 90 proof Evan Williams, which I didn't know that it was ever 90 proof. And I think I knew at one point that it was age stated, but it's Swan. Look, it's been a minute since I've had some pre-fire, but I'm excited for this. This is a nice little treat every now and then to remind myself of times long gone.
Yeah. You don't get the dusty note. I didn't notice it.
No, I would say
really like the nose.
a little bit of like kind of mustiness, but it's not overpowering.
Just compared to the Evan Williams we had a minute ago, you get a little bit of a musty note, but it's not nearly as strong as turkey, where it hits you in the face with it.
Man, there's a lot of cinnamon on the nose, though.
Baking spices, man. I'm
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
you.
for sure. There's a greenery to it, too, that I'm not entirely sure what it is. I can't quite pick it up. If this were Evan Williams today, I would be buying Evan Williams all the time.
Yeah, I would definitely keep a bottle of Evan Williams
Yeah.
all the time.
And I don't think
The
it
palate
even...
kind of switches a little bit to more of that smokiness.
Yeah, it really does. Especially on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Woo. Yeah. You can definitely taste like the barrel char towards the end of it. Man, that's good.
It packs a little bit of heat for a 90 proof, but
does.
it's for somebody that likes to drink 100 to 120 usually. I like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, that, I mean, we haven't even gotten past 90 proof. We might not for a couple of pours either. But we've not had anything, I would say, negative to say about these products so far, right?
Not at all.
I mean, even at a lower proof, we're saying they're still full-bodied. They still have a lot of characteristic to it. They don't taste like they're watered down.
They aren't one note.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a really wide range of complexity with Heaven Hill products, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, there may be something to be said, and there was a conversation I saw recently about this too, about whether or not age statements have actually, affected the quality of the products that we're buying, or whether or not it was just kind of, a product of the growing bourbon market or whatever. But I think that Heaven Hill, if you look at what they're doing and how many different facets of their industry they are taking on, they are doing it so ridiculously well.
They are. Yeah, I mean, even when their limited releases come out, they're generally easier to find than some of the, Buffalo Trace ones.
Yeah, William Heaven Hill, they just had a 12-year-old come out at Cast Strength that, from what I understand, is fantastic.
Wasn't it like over 140?
I think so.
Just something ridiculous.
Yeah. I might have to get a bottle of that.
You might have to, yeah.
I might have to make a special trip to Bardstown.
Yeah, but I mean, they're really big about keeping good product in their gift shop, which is phenomenal because I love Buffalo Trace, don't get me wrong, but the ability for me, somebody who actually lives in Frankfurt, to go pick up a bottle of Blanton's or E.H. Taylor, it's hard. But every single time I go to the Heaven Hill gift shop, it's like, here's something you probably won't find on the shelf. Here's a Heaven Hill 125 proof Elijah Craig Grenade. And, here's a lot of our offering, here.
I think it's important, too, to talk about the way that family has played into the Heaven Hill brand. Like I said, they've been family-owned and operated since 1935. Founded by members of the Beam family, and up until a couple of years ago, they had master distillers and owners who were, really, really super involved in the brand and everything. But I think that by maintaining this awareness or this identity of what you're doing, not just in the wide scope of the brand, but, in your day-to-day activity, I think that's really important for distilleries now, and not something that we see all that often. But I think that Heaven Hill kind of has it. They have it right.
I think so too. And I think, honestly, they're looking at the market and adapting to it better than a lot of other people are right now. Because I think at the beginning of this show, when I first started doing it, I would say we're missing extra age weeded bourbon. We never got any of it. I mean, the only one we had was the WLW.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
they made the move to pull off their, Old Fitz, Bottled and Bond, and put up ultra aged, call back to, the old decanter style bottles, Old Fitz. They filled the gap and quickly. And whatever we're complaining about not having age statements, they put an age statement on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're looking at the complaints and literally putting out stuff that accordingly. So I mean, that for them to, even family owned or even company owned, if you were to go with that, to look at that and then adapt to it and put out product for that need, that's just awesome.
Have you noticed similarities between all that we've had so far of like pick out, oh, this is all kind of Heaven Hill? Or have you noticed like a different profile on all?
I think that everything's been pretty unique so far. While they may still have some kind of bits and pieces here that are similar, I think overall, yeah, they've been kind of their own thing. Yeah, we did just have Evan Williams 1783 versus an Evan Williams pre-fire product, but I mean, yeah, and we're only really 3 pours in. I think once we start getting into some of their more of their common stuff that's I would say maybe more widely available or more associated with their brand, I think that's going to be where we kind of start seeing similarities from product to product.
Yeah.
But
I just wanted to keep that question in mind as we go through it, just because that'll be an interesting topic to see.
Yeah.
For sure. This really
sure.
does have the similarities or differences within their brands.
Why don't we then jump into a brand that we've already talked about? I would say Elijah Craig. Fortunately, this is a 12-year-old rear age stated. So I figured we'd jump into this a little bit, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Not that.
That would be awful, Perry.
Special shout out, by the way, to Joseph Brazo for finding me a replacement for this bottle, which means that I can enjoy this a little bit more often than I have been.
Yeah, and it probably has a cork that's together.
That's not in 2 pieces. Well, really, it's now 1 piece because I don't know where the topper is. Anyway. I think that we can't have a conversation, too, about Heaven Hill without talking about, and we touched on it just very briefly, but the fire of 1996.
Yeah.
That to me, in kind of broad strokes, though, for me seeing, and really now in 2018, 2019, seeing what happened with the fire and the way that other distilleries and people responded in the community, that to me was kind of a defining moment for what bourbon is and can be, and why competition is not always the best aspect when talking about bourbon. Because after the fire, companies like Jim Beam, Brown-Forman were supplying barrels to Heaven Hill to get their stock back up. It really wasn't until 1999 when they bought the Bernheim facility in Louisville that they kind of got their feet back planted again and were really able to fully 100%, get themselves back up. And yeah. So it just is special to me to see the way that people can and will respond in times like that when it comes to bourbon. Sorry.
I agree. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Sorry.
Silence.
I agree that, the community of bourbon, it's a very unselfish and community around that. Because, from the drinkers to the distillers to the companies, you can see that within everything. Like when you talk about bourbon, you talk about relationships and, memories and friendships that you've had.
Yeah.
And the fact that a competitor, after something that happened, that ideally they're sitting there going, we could make it like be the front runner. We could hold the market share of this, and to be like, no, any bourbon is good bourbon. We need to help the companies that, Heaven Hill after this.
Right.
That was really cool.
I mean, you can look at the giant scale of companies, and then you can also look at just the individual scale, like just the people that drink it. I mean, it's nuts to me when we hang out with anybody that listens to this, and they're like, oh, I brought a box. I'm going to call you out, buddy. Dustin, every time he comes over, he brings a whole box of bourbon. I'm like, you brought the liquor store with you, buddy. We got a cabinet upstairs. And he's just like, have you had this? Have you tried this? And I'm like, this is insane. It's crazy. And it's never just, cheap stuff. I mean, people are so in love with this product, they're willing to share it regardless of the price or what it sets them back. And, I mean, there's just wonderful stuff that happens every day just because people are not selfish about sharing it. It's insane. So you can look at it, as Dustin, or you can look at it as the entirety of bourbon. And it's nuts. I mean, it's great. And most people we interact with in bourbon are like that. Dixon, huge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you like turkey? Here's some, cheesy gold foil from forever ago. I don't even know when it was from, and he just pulls it out and pours it like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to get one of those bottles is insane.
I also think the bourbon community is still fairly small, so it still has that kind of interweaved fibers to keep it connected a little bit. I mean, yes, we're going through the bourbon boom, and the bourbon booms happen, all that. But if you go outside of like some of these states, a lot of people are like, sorry, I don't drink bourbon. I don't even know.
Oh, you want some bourbon? Yeah, I got Jack Daniels.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, one of our friends of the show, Christian, is over in Greece right now, and he sent a picture to our little group chat of a menu from a restaurant where he was, and it said special whiskeys, malts, and bourbon. Chivas, Dimple, Glenfiddich, Jack Daniels, and Johnny Walker Black Label. No bourbon.
Yeah, there's none of that is in there.
No bourbon on that menu. Even though they claim that there is bourbon on that menu.
One day. They'll get it on there one day. It's okay.
To all our listeners in Greece, help your fellow bourbon drinkers out. So, Elijah Craig 12 years were real good, right?
It's so good, man.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so different, but than the normal one that they've got on the shelf now, but I don't know. It's for me it is, but I think it's just the extra heat. And there's some more of that mapley note that you were hinting at, but the one on the shelf now, I guess that's really what it's missing is those two things. As far as like the age, if I was just complaining about the difference in age, I don't know if I could really tell the difference.
I don't think I would either. The differences that I could tell was the maple syrup, caramelized brown sugar kind of vibe to it, that smell.
Yeah, it's more of a sugary sweetness overall.
Yeah. Mm.
I like the one that's on the shelf right now too, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, Elijah Craig is just one of those that I tend to reach for.
Yeah, there's not many standard offering bourbons that come out in 175s that I'll actually buy the 175. Mm-hmm. I always go for the small one. Elijah Craig, I think I've got 2 175s at home right now. Because eventually I'll go through them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're just so solid. It's hard not to.
So I went through a period where I was thinking that I couldn't find any good Elijah Craig store picks because I hadn't really had a good one ever. And there was something that hit recently. I don't know what it was, whether it was just a group of people who were able to get their hands on really good barrels, or Heaven Hill brought out some of their older stock, their better stock, whatever it was. But I've all of a sudden started seeing better Elijah Craig picks recently. There's one on the table. It's 13 years.
Which is nuts.
That's pretty insane. It's from Total Wine here in Lexington. I'm excited for this one. I think I cracked it open the day that I got it and was like, oh, well, here we go.
See, I've never gone this way. Usually I have the 12-year and then go back to the new one. That's rumored to be, what, like 9-ish?
It's a blend of 9 to 12, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've never gone the other direction. I've actually never had the 18, 20, or 23 that they put out.
So, funny story about a bottle of the 18 year. I was over at my father-in-law, Brett's, once, and having a good night and everything. And I remembered he had a bottle of Elijah Craig 18. I was like, Brett, why don't we have some? He was like, okay, sure, let's do it. Pulls it out, and it's got that milky cloudiness of bourbon that's had the cap off for a long time or has been sitting in the sun or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, we can't drink this. This is the equivalence of spoiled milk to bourbon. And I went from, in terms of excitement, 0 to 100 to 0 really, really quickly.
Yeah.
But,
and then you proceeded to have it.
No, I had none of it. I was staying as far away from that as possible.
This is not as hot smelling to me. It's like the last one had more char or like ethanol or something to it.
Alternatively, I don't think the nose is too sweet either.
I'm picking up a little bit more cinnamon on the nose here.
I don't really get that. Maybe I'll get it on the palate.
I'm getting more cinnamon.
On the palate, I'm getting a hibiscus.
Interesting.
And like honeysuckle. More of a floral. And that's odd, but right on the front.
Yeah, I get it a little bit. The finish is, I think, quite a bit better than the 12-year.
I think the finish is probably the best part of this. Not to say that the front and middle of the palate is bad. Yeah, the front of it is really sweet. It has that honeysuckle flavor to it.
Yeah.
The middle palate, though, is super dry. Super oaky and dry. Mm-hmm. But once it gets into the finish, I think is where this really kind of starts to all come together. And it really does become an enjoyable flavor profile.
Out of the two, I think this is my favorite.
I'd have
but
to
it's
agree.
hard to compare. Just because,
Yeah.
you know. Well,
I can't get either of these. Like, it's not like I can go buy them now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, if you've got some Heaven Hill that I can't buy, I'm all for trying it.
I got some.
Oh, just a few bottles. It's okay.
The progression of from the front of the palate to the finish is just so good.
It's wild, man.
It's a roller
really
coaster.
interesting.
I mean, it's a nice progression from sweet to smoky to dark.
I've had a lot of Elijah Craig, and for me, there's not a ton of variance in some of the picks. I mean, I got one that literally just tasted like it was the regular offering.
Maybe it
Yeah,
was.
you gave me a bottle of that.
Yeah, and it was just the strangest thing. I don't know why.
They just slapped a label on it and charged you
Said,
$10
"There
more
it
dollars.
is."
Yeah, but they're all still pretty good. I've not had one that I've been just like turned off by. I guess they're all pretty good stuff. I don't know. I wish there was more variance in Elijah Craig picks, but I also think maybe that's one of the limiting factors with Heaven Hill is they've got so many different offerings. They kind of have to have a pretty narrow selection process for, some of their barrel pick stuff.
Yeah.
Because if not, it's going to veer off into a different variety they offer.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really lingering bourbon.
Oh, yeah, it's hanging around.
I mean, as it's starting to get towards the back end of the finish, I'm getting marshmallow and a little bit of like orange peel, a lot of fruitiness to it, I would say too. It's kind of like this would it and I think that if you were to do something with this bourbon, like maybe put it in an old fashioned, it might get lost. Mm-hmm. You know, I think they would probably become just this overly cohesive note
Of orange.
of citrus, of, you know, some of the sweeter flavors. I like this pour. I don't know personally if I like it more than I did the 12 year. It's just me.
That's
though.
fine.
That's fair.
Just me though.
I got a question about Heaven Hill for you guys.
I would love to answer your question about Heaven Hill.
What do you feel like is missing from their ginormous lineup? What would you like to see from them?
I would like to see a higher proof offering that is readily available.
Like an Old Granddad 114
Kind
style?
of, maybe even like a Knob Creek single barrel around the 120 proof range. Doesn't necessarily have to be that high. I mean, yeah, it could be 110 to 115, but I think that Heaven Hill really does shine in higher proof releases. Mm-hmm. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is a really good example of that. I've not had a bad one. I've just had ones that aren't as good as others.
Yeah.
You know? So, yes, you can get Elijah Craig Barrel Proof if you hunt a little bit now, but they just don't have anything that's consistently higher proof other than maybe, say, Pikesville, which we're going to be talking about here a little bit later, that you can kind of just walk in and pick a bottle of up. I don't know. I think that that's maybe something that they're missing.
I could get behind that. Just a higher proof offering. 110 to 120.
I think I would say, I mean, it's probably more of like their, like a barrel pick kind of stuff, like we were saying.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, you can't say that because that's not a, standard offering. Standard offering, I guess maybe like more of a rye selection. Because how many different ryes do they have?
They've got
2.
Rittenhouse and Pikesville.
So 2.
So 2.
So maybe venture off into some more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, Pikesville is a staple, but I wonder if there's, like Rittenhouse, at least I haven't heard of that often. So.
Rittenhouse is kind of a behind the bar cocktail thing that they
Yeah.
use. They use it a lot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ordered a rye cocktail, there's a good chance it's had Rittenhouse in it.
So I guess I'd like to see more of a rye.
If I could just dream for me, 15-year Elijah Craig Barrel Proof picks. Or just like offerings.
15 year?
Okay.
15.
Why so old?
I just want, I've heard such good things about the 18 through 21, but after I get past that 15 mark, for me, it's almost too much.
Okay.
So I was kind of wanting something right there on that edge of like just
Interesting.
extra age with a lot of proof. Because I think that it would be almost too much for some people, but I could get used to it.
What if they made Elijah Craig Barrel Select into a barrel pick program?
Kind of like Knob Creek does with their 120.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this would be 125. I think you keep it at the same proof that Elijah Craig Barrel Select in the gift shop is, but it's a barrel program.
That'd be
That'd be
amazing.
cool.
I'd be all
Yeah.
over it.
I wouldn't even mind if they bottled it in the little grenades for shops. You know?
That would be pretty cool too, honestly.
Yeah, like,
I
could
wouldn't
you-
be upset about that.
If they did picks in those and just sent them out.
That'd be very cool. Or like a very curated selection of things, kind of like like a Woodford, what Masters collection, or is that what they call it?
Yeah. So they actually kind of have something like that. It's the Parker's Heritage Collection.
Okay.
That comes out every year, and it's
Shows what I know.
Well, no, I mean it's fine. We get to have these conversations together. The Parker's Heritage Collection was created in honor of Parker Beam, who passed away from Lou Gehrig's a few years ago, and every bottle, a percentage of it goes to, research into ALS. There's always something different about it. There was at one point like a 12-year bottled and bond. There was a
24-year.
Yeah,
A weeded malt.
Yeah, exactly. Last year's was the Curacao finished barrels.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this kind of limited edition range that they provide for people. The William Heaven Hill too, which you can actually only really get at the distiller, right?
I've heard there's some distribution on it, but I've never seen it, so I don't know
think
how true
I ever
that
have
is.
either.
Yeah, I've never seen it outside the gift shop.
Yeah, I haven't really either. But yeah, they have kind of that higher end thing, but it's kind of few and far between if you...
It does not sit on the shelf like Woodford does.
Oh, no, it does not. No, it does not. I mean, I think I've...
Granted, alternatively, they have like a whole master's collection with their portfolio stuff too. So
True.
And it's like half the liquor store.
Yeah. Now, Heaven Hill does a lot of great stuff. They're not really known, I guess, for experimenting.
Yeah.
I mean, they experiment with their Parker's Heritage, and people grab it the second it comes out. I mean, just this year, for me to get one bottle, I went to probably 20 or 30 different stores looking for orange Curacao finished bourbon, which I didn't even really want. I just wanted it for the bottle, and it came down to me flipping a coin with a guy and I lost. Like, that's how hard it is to find. I mean, it's ridiculously difficult. And then you go home and you look at the reviews and you're like, can't believe I didn't get that bottle. And you're like, it's not great. It's kind of weird. If you like orange, maybe it's for you. It's just, it's not great. And I'm still like, I still want this bottle. Like, but then you got Woodford Oak Grain still sitting on the shelf. So it might be for somebody.
Now, Swan, you also brought some stuff to the table tonight. What did you happen to bring us?
I brought, and this is what I just poured, we're having some age-stated Fighting Cock. It's a 6-year. They've since discontinued the age. Lovely friend, Adam Terry, listener of the show.
Adam Terry, congrats
gave
on
me
your
this
baby.
bottle. Congrats on your baby.
I mean, it's been a couple months at this point, but
I'm still proud of you, man. You're making it. I'm sure you're tired. Have a drink for us. But he
have a drink for us. We'll have a drink for him.
For you, yeah. But anyways, I've actually not opened this. I haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, this is a fresh crack.
This is a fresh crack. We're gonna see how it is. Now, I was explaining this to Curtis a little while ago. This is kind of a direct competitor to Wild Turkey 101. It's about the same proof. This one comes in at 103, and you've got Wild Turkey Fighting Cock. You can see the similar just in that, but it's Heaven Hill product. So I'd be kind of curious as a person that doesn't like Wild Turkey 101 if this is any better. The nose on it's definitely not as fragrant as Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah, I think that it has a lot more sweetness to it, though, on the nose than Turkey 101 does.
For sure, yeah. I mean,
and on the palate, for that matter.
We always give it that, like, almond butter quality to Wild Turkey 101.
Not have
this is totally different direction.
This is butterscotch and caramel. Very much so, though, butterscotch.
Yeah, this is baked goods.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably why I like it a little bit more.
It's okay. No. Swan, I will not allow this in this podcast studio. Curtis, you are accepted and you are loved.
You might be wrong, but you are accepted.
No, man, I think that this is still a very good bourbon. I just prefer 101 over it. But I can understand why you would prefer this over 101.
Yeah, I like the baked goods note a little better, and it's not as rough around the edges to me. I feel like it's just a little smoother, like on the palate. I will say that there is still that note or weird thing that I get that I'm like, it's a little bitter.
I wonder if it has something to do with the proof range.
Maybe. I don't know, but he doesn't do that with bottled and bonds.
I love bottled and bonds.
That's true, but maybe I don't know. Maybe there is just
100 to 105 is not your range.
But 100 is.
101 to 105 is not your range.
I don't know. I wonder if it has to be the mash bill, I would assume.
I guess maybe it's just high rye bourbons in general, but I mean, this one's I don't really think it's
But it's
that.
not that high rye. You know?
No, because this is just a standard mash bill. I mean, if you took this down to 94, it could potentially be Elijah Craig, if it fit the profile. I don't know. It's
I
definitely different.
enjoy this one a lot better than the 101.
I think
Figured.
101 fits my category of like 100 to 110 better for me personally. If I'm just looking at bourbons that I can drink for cheap, this one's dirt cheap. Getting one of these on the shelf is not a big deal. Now this is the age stated, the regular on the shelf. It's pretty close. They didn't really lose a whole lot with the age statement on this one. There's some that I feel like they lose quite a bit, but this one's not too bad. If you're not a turkey fan and you want something a little stronger, this might be one to pick up because we've mentioned a couple times on this one that, sometimes the branding on this is a little difficult and maybe not super strong, so it is easy to look over, but it's definitely worth picking up, especially with the dumb name, but
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
It's an ugly bottle.
It's not great.
Not very pretty.
It's not the prettiest bottle you can find, but I don't know. I think there's something of an appeal to it because of that. Just maybe just in sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for crying out loud, we had Redneck Riviera.
Yeah. Just because we saw
Just
it.
because we saw it. I was like, hey, we should maybe try this. But like, I would pick this up just because I was I would have been wondering if it's good or not. And I think it's good. I think that this is something
good.
that people should explore.
Yeah, I think 101 and Fighting Cock are good bourbons. They just are not my profile.
Yep.
I mean,
Fine.
yeah.
No, it's okay. I don't
Sorry.
care. No, I don't care, dude.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like,
Here's the thing. If you went,
what it is.
I don't like Turkey 101 and everybody else who does is stupid. Then I would be upset over it,
Yeah.
But like, whatever, man. You like what you like. That's what's important.
It's just odd that there's like two. There are two that I'm just like, gives this bitter
So you
kind of note that I do not want.
So what I'm hearing is that you don't like bourbons associated with birds.
What you got against birds, man?
But I like Wild Turkey, like Rare Breed, and all the other ones. It's just 101.
All right, fair enough.
But, going back to your point, there's just some that you don't like. There's actually one from Heaven Hill I just don't like.
What's that?
The 90 proof green label, Heaven Hill.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
Every time I've had it, I'm just like, this is like so close to what I want, but it's just not what I want. And for that reason, I've had this same bottle of 90 proof green label and probably 8 to 10 bottles of the 100 proof bottled and bond 6 year that they used to put out and gone through every single one of those without finishing my green label.
Huh.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be any reason for me to dislike it. It's 10 proof points lower than the other one.
Yeah.
I mean, I just never reach for it. So much so that when we did our blending episode, I was like, I wanted to make this better because I didn't like it.
But you didn't do it.
No, not really. But I tried.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess everyone's got their thing.
I think everybody just has something that they are not going to enjoy.
Well, I figure we have one more pour before we get into the review. And this is one that has been kind of divisive for people so far in 2019. But this is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof B519 coming in at 122.4 proof. Swan, I'll let you do the honors and pour first.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm going to fill up the whole Glencairn.
That's a lot of bourbon there, champ.
I got the weirdest note off of this.
Do tell.
Have you ever, completely finished, a pizza or whatever and opened the pizza box and just the smell of,
Cheese and cardboard.
cheese and cardboard?
I have.
I get a new shoe smell.
This is so strange.
It smells like leather.
Yeah. I'll agree with that. I'm not getting the cardboard.
I don't know.
But the new shoe leather kind of sounds good. It's kind of a perfumey smell. You know what I'm getting remnants of? A little bit, and this probably shouldn't make sense, but a little bit of the nose from the WLW. That fragrant, floral perfume nose.
You know what I'm really picking up now, and I really am not smelling new shoes. It is masked by what I am now processing as buttered popcorn.
But nowhere near the level of Dickel.
No.
Okay.
No, it's like good quality buttered movie popcorn.
Okay.
It's like a gourmet popcorn.
It's like
You're not finding that at the movie theater.
It's like the kid from the local high school is coming around to your house and they're selling bags of popcorn for their school fundraiser or their band fundraiser. And you're like, I guess I'll buy a couple of bags of it, but I don't really want to buy all these bags of it. And so you buy like 2 because you feel bad. One's standard, one's crazy. The crazy one is like funfetti and the normal one is just butter. And you get the butter one and it's like, oh, this is really good. But the funfetti one, you're like, why did I do this? And the regular one, you're like, this is even better than I thought it was.
See, I thought mine was specific
very
with
specific.
the pizza
That was
box.
beautiful.
What was specific?
Just, the Boy Scout that you bought popcorn
That
from.
whole scenario you made.
Man, that's
palate.
good.
I can tell you this is not my favorite that's come out over the past few years,
This is really good, though.
but it is definitely hard to say this is a bad bourbon by
Oh,
any
the
means.
back end of
You
that
can't
palate
say it's
into
a
the finish, though, is spectacular.
Yeah.
Spectacular. Oh, the oak and the buttery popcornness of it that I was getting on the nose, that starts kind of playing together. There's like a caramel note to it as well. Daggone it, man! I think this is a really good. I think this is a really good Elijah Craig barrel proof release.
Yeah.
It reminds me more of old Elijah Craig barrel proofs. Not that it's exactly like them, but I think that it has similar notes to it. There has been just kind of this common note in Elijah Craig barrel proofs recently with more oak and a stronger caramel note. But this, though, just seems to have a more well-rounded profile, I would say.
See, I lean towards the more butterscotch, caramel heavy, notes from the past couple of releases.
Okay.
So this one's, I think that's why maybe it's not my favorite that they've put out in a little while. But I tend to go towards the sweeter bourbons, the ones that have those that stray away from the savory notes. While I do like them and they've got their place, but it's just not something I pick up as much, especially when it's got Elijah Craig on the bottle.
Yeah.
So I could
think
definitely see why some people would say maybe this isn't the strongest release. Maybe I didn't like it. I'm kind of questioning whether I should get the next one or not, but it's still so good.
Yeah, and I totally understand what you're saying. But I think I would classify as this finish is one of the best I've had in a long time. The finish on this
Maybe
is just...
ever.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, really, the flavors just kind of keep compounding on themselves.
Yeah,
and
from the palate, from the nose, it just intermingles very well. It also, I had the first sip, and I was like, okay, it's got a nice little heat to it. But then you have another sip, and it builds upon it. Not to the point of it's too much heat, but it's just a warming, kind of consistent feeling.
Yeah.
It's one of the best finishes I've had in a long time.
I think the finish is definitely the strong suit. I think the only thing that if I had to pick a weak point for this, it'd be the nose. I just want more. I mean, it's still so good. Saying a weak point for this thing is kind of a joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great bourbon.
It's just whether or not you identify with that profile, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of confused about it because, like you said, it's not that super, baked goodsy, caramel heavy nose. It's still there. It's just not hitting you in the face with it.
I'm trying to approach this from maybe not an Elijah Craig barrel proof stance, but from just, is this good stance?
That's probably
I
appropriate.
think this is really good.
Yeah.
I didn't feel this way about the A119. I thought the A119 was good at best. This is great. I don't want to compare too much, but this is one of my favorite releases that have come out this year.
This year, yeah, I'd have to agree with you.
Yeah.
If I'm just taking the name off the bottle, probably one of my favorites that have come out this year.
We might have to do a full-on, blind bracket and everything for...
Oh, I'll break out the Lazy Susan. I got you.
I know you
we
will.
can do it.
I know you will. But just for our 2019 Bourbon of the Year, Whiskey of the Year, whatever it is. Because I feel like we maybe are not biased, but we know kind of brand-wise what we like and everything. But I think that there's an opportunity for us to step back and try to find new ways to understand what we really did like from this year. And, I mean, yeah, it's only July. We have plenty of time to...
Plus, we haven't done a, blind...
Oh, gosh, it's been
Blind
forever
flight.
since we've done a blind...
Forever.
Yeah.
in a long time.
I would like to do a double blind episode where none of us know what we're actually drinking. And maybe it's Lucy that pours stuff for us. But I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
that'd be really cool.
I want to do a Kentucky roulette episode. Put 6 pours over there, spin it. One's awful, the other 5 are great.
final verdict on Heaven Hill. I would say that they are one of the most diverse and accessible distilleries out there. I always encourage people to go and visit them if they can. And honestly, look a little bit more into what their brand profile is, because there are things out there that you may not have even known they actually produce. And again, across the board, I don't think that there's anything bad from Heaven Hill. Just take the time to venture into what they make, what they have on the shelf.
And if you visit Kentucky, pick up a bottle of J.W. Dant, T.W. Samuels, and J.T.S. Brown.
Oh,
Yes.
man, I left out T.W. Samuels on this episode.
Oh, it's okay. We've had plenty of good stuff. But
Yeah, fair enough.
if you visit Kentucky, pick those up. They're going to be on the bottom shelf. You're going to ask the liquor store owner, hey, do you have this? And he's going to look at you like, why would I carry that? And it's probably still going to be on the shelf because he forgot about it. But it's good stuff. And they're all dirt cheap. They're all Kentucky only.
Curtis, final thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Curtis's final thoughts.
No, for real though. Heaven Hill products are just you should definitely pick up any and every that you can find. Almost all of them are very good. There's very few products that they put out that you would not like. Especially if you like the baked goods. If you have a profile of a baked goods kind of note, then you should definitely pick that kind of stuff up.
One thing we didn't get to, and Swan brought it along with him, but the mellow corn is it's a bottled and bond corn whiskey. People may hear that and go, why would I be interested in trying that? But I think that there is quite a bit of merit in a corn whiskey at 100 proof and 4 years old that is severely overlooked by whiskey or bourbon drinkers.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the color.
Oh, it looks light.
It's
It looks light.
very light. If you're a Scotch person and you're looking for something, this is kind of like some of the Scotches look, especially like Japanese whiskey and stuff. It's very, very light, but it's got quite a bit of flavor to it. You'd be surprised.
So that does it for our conversation on Heaven Hill products. But we are not quite done just yet. We have a little review for you guys as well. Before we get to it, though, because we are reviewing a rye whiskey instead of a bourbon whiskey, I figure that we should probably acclimate our palates a little bit towards rye whiskeys. And we'll stay within the Heaven Hill profile. And we are going to head over to Rittenhouse Straight Rye Whiskey. It's bottled and bond, of course, 100 proof, at least 4 years old. Just so we kind of get our minds set where they need to be. It still has a baked goods note to it.
It does. Have you guys ever smelled witch hazel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Does it smell like that to you?
I think it does, yeah.
It's kind of cool. Because I always thought that stuff smells good. It'll probably kill you, but you shouldn't drink it. But it still smells pretty good, you know? God, if it tasted like this, I might actually do it.
Same.
If witch hazel did.
Yeah.
You can tell on the nose and on the palate that it's not one of the higher rye whiskeys out there. But there are still shades of the rye note. Like, you can tell that it's over 50% rye. But this is more of like what I would consider rye bread than a rye whiskey. You know, like, it's still sweet. It's still got a baked quality to it. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I do too. And a lot of people will call this a cocktail whiskey because they use it in cocktails so much. But honestly, it's a good sipper too. I mean, I feel like it might be getting overlooked a little bit.
I'm getting kind of like a pumpernickel bread.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there is kind of like a raisin quality to it.
I'm definitely
As
getting
well.
the raisin quality.
Raisin, cinnamon, rye. It all kind of cohesively forms into a bread note. Which sounds really generic.
I mean,
but
I'm just getting... Now that you said it, I'm getting like a cinnamon raisin swirl bread.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I get that. I totally get that. Which, by the way, with some syrup over top, if you've toasted it, excellent. It's like poor man's French toast.
Might have to do that. That sounds really good.
Might do that before I go to bed now.
Yeah.
Just eating
you
syrup
getting the
bread
raisin?
before. What is it?
What are you getting?
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely getting the raisin. I get the cinnamon. I'm having a hard time picturing the bread
Okay.
personally, but it's really it's good. I think I really need to pick up a bottle of this because it's one I overlook all the time, and we're gonna talk about it here in a second. But I always grab the Pikesville just because of the proof and the how much I hear people talk about it, and I overlook this one, especially knowing that a lot of people tend to throw it in cocktails, and I just don't drink a whole lot of cocktails.
Yeah.
I don't know. I definitely feel like I've overlooked it trying it now.
Well, I think we probably should grab for the Pikesville at this point, though.
For sure. Yeah.
So, Swan,
One of my favorite corks, by the way.
this is 110
10.
proof? Okay, I almost said 115. I am really excited to review this one. I've only had limited experience with it, but I know how many people view it. Honestly, it doesn't smell that dissimilar from the Rittenhouse.
I don't even pick up the extra proof on this. To be
I
honest.
actually do. Now that I've kind of swirled it around a little bit, I'm starting to pick up a little bit more of the proof. It seems a little bit heavier, I would say, than the Rittenhouse does.
On the palate, I'm not getting as much of the fruity note or the raisin.
No, it's definitely spicier on the palate. For being a barely legal rye, meaning that it's right at 51%, it still has some pretty spicy qualities to it. And I think despite the mash bill, it is just... It really does have a good spice kick to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like it's making up for the spice kick from the Rittenhouse in proof. Maybe not necessarily in mash bill because it's the same mash bill, which I'm fine with because I tend to go for the higher proofs, and if I'm going to have a rye, there's almost that understanding it's going to be a little more punchy than maybe some of the bourbon that I drink, which is fine, and I get that a lot more with this Pikesville than I do with the Rittenhouse.
I'm going to say something about the nose.
Okay.
That somebody a long, long time ago said about a nose on a rye whiskey that actually has never made it to air. Smells like tomato soup.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I get the kind of the earthiness of a tomato, like a tomato like straight up out of the ground that's got some of the herbs and everything in it.
I'm having a hard time picturing that, but
I definitely am getting an earthy tomato off the nose.
I'm getting more of like a soil feel, a soil nose, like some of like topsoil or some sort of soil in terms of that, like the ground. I'm not getting the tomato, I don't think.
Sorry.
No, I mean I just am not getting it. I get the ground, like fresh out of the ground kind of feel.
Yeah.
I'm kind of having a hard time picking notes out on this one. It's good.
It's really earthy.
Yeah. It's so I looked at the prices on these too, just for our comparison here. $23.99 versus $52.99 for Rittenhouse and Pikesville. Now, I've constantly recommended Pikesville. After having the two back to back, I don't know if I can quite do it for double the price.
I don't think I can either. I think I enjoy the Rittenhouse a little better.
Yeah, I kind of think I do too.
I will say Pikesville has more of like a rye profile, I feel.
Yeah, I think so too.
In terms of just like me drinking it and trying to enjoy it, I think I like the Rittenhouse profile better.
It's also kind of led me to believe that I think that I may just start recommending a rye completely out of Evan Hill's wheelhouse. I mean, if you're in Kentucky, I would honestly tell you to grab, at this point, the New Riff Rye.
Oh, yeah.
Over this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because if you're looking for an actual strong, more than 51% rye that's drinkable, has a lot of versatility, Old Forester and New Riff have knocked this out of the park now. I mean, it's 2 years ago, anytime somebody would have said grab a rye, I would have told them Pikesville. No question. It's worth the money. They're going to ask, is it worth the $50? Yes. Pick it up.
Huh.
But now, I mean, Old Forester, if you're looking for cheap, that'd be the go-to. If you're looking to pay a little extra, New Riff. At least for me.
I'd agree with that. And, I mean, when you ask the question of, you know, what would you want to see Heaven Hill kind of do, I think I would like to see a little bit stronger of a rye selection if that's the case.
I would almost say they're missing that at this point because they've got 100% corn whiskey. They've got the Bernheim 7-year, which is 100% wheat whiskey.
Yep.
And they're missing 100% rye and 100% malt. But the malts never do well.
Yeah.
I've yet to see anybody do 100% malt and do well. That's a bourbon distiller that has really latched onto that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously malt whiskey and stuff does great, but you know, we're not Scotland. So there's some people that really struggle with that. Like who just put out one locally? We've got Alltech.
Yeah, Town Branch.
Town Branch just put one out. I've not heard anything on it. Nothing. I mean, nobody's bought one and told me whether it's good or not.
No.
I don't know. I think I'd like the 100% rye now more than I used to. And if I was just starting and I was comfortable with the higher proof stuff, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But it's still maybe not one that I'd recommend to somebody trying to make that leap from bourbon.
So we have a review system on the podcast of nose, palate, finish, and price. Each category is out of 5, and then we total everything up for a score out of 20, and we let you know whether or not you should be interested in buying this. Who wants to go first on their scores?
Do we want to do all of them or just
Well, let's go category by category.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start off. So for the nose, I'm going to go with a 3. I think it was a solid nose.
Yeah.
You know, had some of that spice, had some of the kind of the baked good note that we've been talking about through all of Heaven Hill products. It's very faint, not as much on the Pikesville. I mean, due to the rye, it being a rye whiskey. But with that being said, I think it's pretty even. I think it's pretty solid. I think it's good. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd give it a 3 as well.
Yeah, there's nothing out of the norm. Nothing that's really putting me off on it. I think it's a good nose.
I actually gave it a 2.5. I just think it's a little faint, and I want more from it jumping 10 proof points from the Rittenhouse. Because, I mean, it's got a lot of similar notes to it, and granted, you know, they're not going to have a ton of variety in rye between it, but, you know, that being said, there's plenty of distilleries that are doing huge varieties in rye.
Yeah.
Like Peerless. I mean, there's picks from them that are wildly different. Just, you know, 2 years, 3 years, less age, and, you know, they're full rise. So, I don't know. I just want a little more from it. So I'm going to stick with 2.5.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with a 3 as well, though. It seems like it just has more of a punch to it than the Rittenhouse does. Maybe not in a rye spice way, but I think that it actually has just more of a genuine quality to it.
Like more of a
nose.
fullness to it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm finding there. Is it the most full-bodied nose I've ever had on a rye whiskey? No, I don't think so. But I do find it really inviting. Palate-wise, though.
Palate for me, I'm going to give it a 3 too. It has that rye quality that I think that the Rittenhouse kind of was missing a little bit. I think it has more of the punch that we were talking about that we want from that rye whiskey. I think it's a solid one. There's nothing, you know, crazy great about it. I just think it's a solid palate.
I gave it a 3.5 on mine.
I gave it a 3.
I don't know. I mean, the stuff that I was missing from the nose showed up on the palate for me. And
Yeah.
I just felt like it gave you more rye spice than the Rittenhouse. And I think a lot of these scores are coming from me comparing it to the Rittenhouse. So if you like Rittenhouse and you're trying to move up to Pikesville, maybe mine's going to be a little more aligned to that. But I personally felt it was much better, and this is where it showed out, was this in the finish. Comparatively to the Rittenhouse. If I was looking at it against other ryes, I think the palate on this is actually one of the better ones. I have a hard time saying if I was specifically looking at the palate to pick this over New Riff, personally. But nose-wise and finish-wise, I think maybe New Riff might take it. But if I'm just looking at Rittenhouse, I do think this is worth the whole extra point for me.
Yeah, and I mean, New Riff is, what, $5 less than Pikesville is?
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, I would probably, and I'm jumping past my finish score, which was a 2.5. But I think that I would probably buy New Riff Rye before I bought this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more up my alley. So price-wise, though, I think I'm going to sit at a 3 for this one. I'm really torn on this because I know that this is a lot of what people will kind of lean towards when they think of rye whiskey. But I get it, but I'm not keen on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, again, New Riff Rye is a much better product for a little bit less money. Yeah, it may not be as widely available as Pikesville is, but if you can get the New Riff Rye, I would go for that. But at the same time, I feel like I might be a little biased trying to review this one. I don't know.
I mean, so my finish price on this was 3.5. I thought the finish was also a really strong point on it. It was lingering. I got more of the bourbon quality, of not maybe the rye quality on the finish. So it's kind of familiarity brought me back to home a little bit. I think it was worth 3.5. The price I actually also gave a 3.5. And my only reasoning on it is I can't really think of a whole lot of rye whiskeys that are 110 proof, really over 100. I mean, there's not a ton of people offering that, and if they are, the price goes through the roof. There's nothing wrong with this. If you're transitioning, I guess, from bourbon to rye, and you're not fully wanting to make the jump to 100% rye,
That's a good point.
I think it's a good intro. Rittenhouse is probably a better introduction, just, at the proof point, because it's like the extra 10 points really carries that rye spice home a little bit more. But this is by no means a bad rye whiskey. I would solidly recommend this at any bar. I just think that there's more that I would recommend in front of it. If you've already tried the other stuff, this is great. This is fantastic. Go pick some of it up. Or even if you've tried a bunch of ryes and you're just like, well, Heaven Hill doesn't make rye. They make two. Look at the 40 bottles on the other side of the shelf, and then look at like the 2 over here. Why would I pick one of those up from Heaven Hill? It's strong stuff. It's good stuff. Pick it up. For me, that puts me at a 13.
For me, on the finish, I gave it a 3. I mean, basically for the same reasons that you gave Swan. I mean, it's a really good. Or did you give it a 3.5?
I gave it a 3.5.
Sorry, I'm giving it a 3. I think I think this rye whiskey, this Pikesville, it's standard. Really, it's a really good rye whiskey. There's nothing that's going to surprise you. There's nothing that's going to, jump out at you to be kind of unique or different or put it a step above something, I think. I think it's just a really great standard to have. If you're trying to transition into it, like you were saying, I think it's something that you should definitely pick up if you're interested in getting into rye whiskeys. Price wise, I think I gave it a 2.5. I think it's a little too high just for me, because I'm not gonna be one that's gonna be picking up a rye whiskey that much. Not to say that that's too high of a price or anything. For me, I just think that is. So that puts me at 11.5. I think it's a recommend though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is too, but I would recommend that you try this maybe at a bar or in a cocktail before you actually went all in on a bottle.
I think that's probably a good rule for most rye whiskey, because it seems like for me, if I like one, I'll buy a whole bottle and I like it that much. If I don't like it, if I get it and I buy it and it's awful, I will not drink the rest of it. Yeah. It's so divisive for me. It's all in or nothing.
One of the only ones that I would say go buy a bottle right now is like the New Riff.
Yeah, I agree.
And that might just be because, it's as of recent, it's like, what have you done for me lately? And I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. And the Old Forester, too. I mean, it's just cheap. I mean, it's hard to say not to buy one of those.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for this review of this episode. We are not quite done yet, though. We do have tips and bits to get through where we recommend something. Maybe not bourbon, but we have something that we want you all to check out. Guys, do you all have tips and bits this week?
I do. I came up with some. All right, so I've been listening to a ton of music, and 2 new albums that came out that I really liked. The new Black Keys album.
Still have not heard it.
It's good. I'm not going to try to spoil anything, but they took a very laid-back vibe compared to some of their other albums. If you like the Eagles, they've kind of got that vibe going on this album, which I like. It's a little more low-key and less, crazy guitar, some lighter singing, very soulful feeling at some points. I really enjoy it. And then Revenge of the Dreamers 3. It's a new album by Dreamville.
Oh,
okay.
J. Cole.
Yeah, J. Cole. There's some artists on that album that I swear I like them better in the collaborations that they do than their original music they put out, which is sad because you think you found somebody you love and you start looking into their music and you're just like, this is not great.
Yeah.
But on that album, it's pretty good stuff. So
a lot of the time it's because they're heightened by
the people around them.
Yeah,
that's true. But it's definitely worth listening to. If you like J. Cole, it's more of him. So
definitely. For me, my tips and bits is the new. Well, it's not new, but Acid Rap by Chance the Rapper just got put on onto Spotify, and so definitely go back if you haven't listened to it. Definitely go back and listen to it. Because it gave me like a whole new appreciation about Chance the Rapper
Yeah, we've talked about Chance before on the show.
Yeah, and he has an album coming out in July at some point.
Oh man!
So keep an eye out for that, and that'll probably be a tips and bit for me. I just had a reappreciation for it.
So friends of the show, Colin and John over at the Hop-Ons podcast, formerly an Arrested Development review podcast, have just started doing a review of Twin Peaks. And if you know me, you know that I love not only, of course, Arrested Development, but Twin Peaks as well. And those guys are doing a really, really awesome job of reviewing this series of Twin Peaks. They're only a couple episodes in, but it's definitely worth checking out. And then I gotta be honest with you guys, I was just kind of going, what am I gonna do with myself tonight? A few nights ago, and I found myself playing Super Mario 64,
Yes.
which is a really fun game. And if you know, it's not all that easy to get into retro gaming, but if you can, it's a fun game. I know I'm like 20 years behind on this, but Super Mario 64 is pretty good.
take that game very
Wasn't bad.
seriously. The penguin slide level. Oh,
I'm not there yet.
when you get there, you're gonna be like, this is no longer fun. This is a mission.
Why did I do this?
Yeah, this is a mission.
Thank you all so much for listening. This has been a really fun episode. Where can people find you all on social media, Curtis and Swan, if they would like to?
On Instagram, you can find me at CurtCon. On Twitter, Curt_Con15.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook at My Bourbon Finder.
If you would like to follow me, I am at PRitter1492 on all social media channels. If you'd like to follow this show, it is at My Bourbon Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please give us a 5-star rate and review on iTunes. That really does help us find new listeners and gets people just really enjoying the show, which is all that we're about here. Bourbonshop.threadless.com is where you can find all of our apparel and merch, if you are so inclined to do so. And then if you would like to become a supporter of the show, you can head to patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast. For as little as $1 a month, you can help this show continue on and on and on. We really do appreciate any and all support that you can provide. Of course, there is no pressure into doing that, but if you are a supporter of the show on Patreon, you get bonus content like extra episodes, you get hangouts, you get live streams, all sorts of awesome things over there. Again, at patreon.com/mybourbonpodcast. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been a really fun week. I've enjoyed this one. But We will see you next week. Until then, I'm Perry.
I'm Curtis.
And I'm Swan.
And this is my Bourbon Podcast. I blacked out what happened.
Sorry, what'd I say?